Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Parkside Cabin Rentals. When it comes to hospitality in the Great Smoky Mountains, the Ogle family has been hosting travelers and East Tennesseans since the park first opened way back in 1934. Still family owned to this day, and now they have dozens of cabins and layouts for you to choose from. Visit ParksideCabinRentals.com, and remember, anytime you stay at a Parkside Cabin Rentals cabin, you get free parking in downtown Gatlinburg. Parkside Cabin Rentals. By the way, Vols and Gators are about 3 minutes into that game, and apparently the score is still 2-0 Tennessee, about 3 minutes in. If anybody else has a quicker phone, let me know. Let's take a look at a quote that came from The Athletic. I just keep plugging The Athletic today. Stuart Mandel, a national writer, was asked by a Missouri fan about the Tigers' ceiling moving forward, the football program. He said, "There's no reason Mizzou under Drinkwitz can't get back to competing for division titles. Georgia is going to be a tough to dethrone as Kirby Smart's recruiting at a whole other level. Florida has a lot more formidable coach today in Dan Mullen than it did in 2013 and 14 when Missouri was East champion, when they had Will Muschamp. But no other program in the division has any decided advantage over the Tigers." Okay, that is interesting. Do you guys agree with that? Do you think only Florida and Georgia have a decided advantage long term, and we're talking about what Drinkwitz can do there, over Missouri? Or do you think Tennessee still has an advantage over Missouri?
I mean, I think what you're talking about really is just like the strength of a brand, right? That's kind of all you're talking about. If you're kind of comparing the in-state talent in Tennessee and Missouri, not entirely different. Probably Tennessee a little bit more, trending better maybe a little bit with the growth in Nashville. But you're really talking about history and a brand. Overall, I'm not sure that there's, if you were trying to compare those two, at least in the last 20 years, I mean, certainly Tennessee has had more success. I mean, Missouri has had more success, but, it's been, again, I think that what you're talking about is what is the value of a brand is kind of the question, and I'm not sure in Tennessee's case it is that much right now.
Okay, that's interesting. Your thoughts? You agree?
I do agree. I think if you take a step back and you say, okay, both of these jobs come open, I think Tennessee would typically be more attractive to
in a typical year, not in a typical year, hanging overhead kind of year.
But that becomes the issue. Is if we're looking over the next 3 to 5 years and what Josh Heupel has inherited and what Eli Drinkwitz has going right now at Missouri, he arguably has a better position right now. He has a quarterback who last weekend decided, I'd rather go to Missouri, and Sam Horn, who committed to the Tigers over Tennessee. So if you look at the next 3 to 5 years, are recruits going to favor Tennessee over Missouri? I still think so. But you have some handcuffs they have to deal with at Tennessee that Eli Drinkwitz right now doesn't have to at Missouri.
The Sam Horn thing's an interesting deal because Pruitt had basically told him, we don't want you.
Right.
I mean, he and his family wanted him to come to Tennessee, and Pruitt said, no interest.
But Horn also could have said, I'm going to take a step back and get to know Josh Heupel a little bit more, and decided not worth it, I'm going to commit to Mizzou.
Yeah, I'm not going to blame Heupel yet, but
but the situation still is Missouri versus Tennessee.
Vince, I look at it and I think the Tennessee brand right now is pretty darn smudged and ugly. If you're looking at today, I'm going, I think that this writer is correct. If I'm looking big picture though, long term, I still think Tennessee has better facilities, bigger stadium, better history, better tradition. This 250-mile radius in terms of where you can recruit from, Atlanta, Charlotte, get into Alabama, Nashville. I think Tennessee does have an advantage on Missouri in the SEC East. Am I wrong?
No, I think it is a short-term versus long-term view. Short-term, a lot of those advantages that Tennessee would have long-term, they have been, to use your term, smudged and decreased. And stadiums aren't packed right now, so that's something that would be an advantage and an appeal to Tennessee that maybe levels the playing field with Mizzou a little bit. And all of what's happened over the last 10, 12, 13 years, I think that has also been a hit on Tennessee, and then obviously the NCAA stuff currently. So yes, short term, there aren't those big advantages for Tennessee over Missouri, but long term, I do think some of those things in place, I think, yes, it would put Tennessee back in place where a lot of people view.
Yeah, I think Tennessee has the engine to make the super high ceiling. If you get the right coach in here, you can ramp up to a level that Mizzou will never have.
Yep.
You have those things, but consistency and just straight up results, it's not been a good run.
No, the last, since about 2001, you can draw a pretty good line that for the most part, it's just been going downhill. All right, Florida leads Tennessee 7-6. When we come back, we'll update you again. But we'll also talk about, it's one thing to sign good players. It's another thing to get something out of them. We'll show you how badly a job Tennessee has done at that over the last few years. Let's talk about signees next on the Sports Source.